For just the second time in history, Canada's women's rugby team has reached the World Cup Final. Rimby's Courtney O'Donnell and Vulcan's Dalika Menon will be on the turf in London with the rest of their teammates, taking on England in front of a sold-out crowd of 82,000 fans, the largest ever for women's rugby. A monumental day for the sport in this country unfolds on TSN tomorrow. Joining us is TSN rugby analyst Magali Harvey. Magali, thanks so much for being here. Let's just talk about, to begin with, before we even get to this on the weekend, how big is this accomplishment for this team already?
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. How big is it? I mean, it's huge. Canada is not a rugby nation, so we're not used to having a Canadian be in the finals. It's only the second time, and I think it really showcases how much rugby has grown since 2014. So very exciting.
So Canada defeating New Zealand, the defending champions, to get to this point. Can you talk about, as they go up against these huge international teams, the disadvantage that these players face on the fundraising side to even be able to perform like they are on the pitch?
Yeah, completely. So I'll give you context using England. If you look at England, they have a budget of $26 million to prepare for this World Cup. Canada had $2.6 million that Rugby Canada was able to provide, and then they had to crowdfund $1 million, or they're getting to crowdfunding to $1 million with the crowdfunding. So there's a huge disadvantage, but it's also interesting to understand how these players prepare. So they live overseas, either in England or in France, playing professional or semi-professional without the necessary pay. And so they do a lot of sacrifices that other teams don't have to do because they're able to play internally, still have their family, their communities, and everything that helps support them.
So what does being in the final and potentially a victory mean for the sport here in Canada?
It's a huge question. I'm sure there's a lot of implications. I do not know that it would necessarily help with funding. And what I mean by that is that you're comparing it to rugby nations. If you look at England, they are a rugby nation. The national team plays, and they are able to have their union receive enough funding to provide contracts. I don't think that's going to be a thing in Canada in the near future, at least. But I think it will help promote future generations, especially women, female, to stay active, to want to be part of a rugby team. And if you look at the social medias of these players, they're not just rugby players, they're role models that people follow, and that they see that they have a personality, they see the dynamic of a team, and that might encourage young women to want to get into sport, whatever the sport is.
Now let's talk about the Canada versus England itself. Coming off the win against New Zealand, does this team have what it takes to become world champions?
That is a fantastic question. I may be biased. I'm going to say yes. But in saying this, I need to provide a context. So Canada is playing a style of rugby that has never been done before. Their coach, Kevin Roy, has been brilliant, has recognized that women's rugby is played differently than men's rugby. How I mean is women are smaller, which means that if you play fast, there's going to be space everywhere. So what we determined from that point on was, if any player is allowed to do whatever they want on the field, irrelevant of their position, it's going to increase the speed of the game. So, for example, if our scrum half is not available, someone else becomes scrum half. And so when they played against New Zealand had no idea how to stop it because their own team does not practice that way. So how do you stop something that you've never been exposed to? On the other hand, England plays a classic rugby, but they play it so well, so specific. They're very accurate and rugby smart. And so it's going to be like playing a new school rugby against a very classical old school rugby, and it'll be a very interesting and exciting game to watch.
Absolutely, it's going to be. We certainly appreciate your insight here this morning and looking forward to all the action.